God is light shining in your darkness, in your darkness.
There's pain and brokenness all around us, and it's not enough to just talk about it. We are called to action. We're called to go.
To be a Christian is to bear another's load.
This is Living Truth.
Is there a God? And if so, what's he like? What's the purpose of life? These big questions have been debated throughout history with intelligent people on both sides of the dispute. In this message, Daniel Gilman joins our Tough Talk series and tackles another big question. Why does it matter? Life is hard, and we need more than just answers. This is Living Truth.
The truth is, it's not always easy to talk about our faith within the context of our culture. Many of us struggle to confidently embed our beliefs into conversations around hot-button issues. For some of us, this struggle results in avoidance. For others, confrontation. But Jesus' example shows us a different way. He never shied away from the tough questions and always approached his interactions with humility and grace. We're introducing a series called Tough Talks, where we'll tackle some tricky subjects like science and faith, stress, and apathy. Our hope is that as we hear from experts in these fields, we become equipped with the tools to apply our faith in hard conversations. As we explore how faith meets culture in Tough Talks, may we all experience an increased confidence in the sovereignty of God. And may we grow to recognize every interaction, whether it's with a friend, neighbor, your mechanic, or a total stranger, as an opportunity to communicate the love of Jesus. Daniel is a leadership coach for political staff in Canada's Parliament and the young adults pastor at Metropolitan Bible Church in Ottawa. Daniel is a speaker for Strength to Fight, helping men and women combat sexual exploitation, and a facilitator for Voice Found, equipping parents to protect children from sexual abuse. Daniel has spoken all over Canada, the United States, and Australia at universities, churches, and pubs. Let's hear from Daniel Gilman.
I escaped from the frigid cold of January 26, 2016, Ottawa. I escaped into my basement apartment, taking off my toque and my scarf and my coat, my layers, had layers. Before I even had all of that off, I opened up my MacBook Air and I stared straight into the eyes of an image I prayed to God to never see. 5 years before this, I'd moved with a team of guys into a broken, low-income, high-needs neighborhood as part of the ministry called Move In. We had moved in to try to help people rebuild their lives and climb out of poverty and come to know the hope that's found in Jesus. And we had all these different programs, but I kind of specialized in running the kids programs. And of all the different kids that we got to know, there's this one kid, Kayla, who I connected with in my first week there. Kayla, it didn't matter how dark the day or how drab the neighborhood, her eyes always sparkled, and we have so many precious memories of dancing in puddles in the rain. And she would come by my house every day, knock on the door, I'd open it, and she would say, "What you doing?" And we'd chat about anything or nothing at all. I'm pretty sure that I was her favorite adult. I know for certainty that she is my favorite kid. I'd been there for 5 years and seen her grow up and become a young 13-year-old with dreams of being the first person ever in her family history to graduate high school, go to university, and be able to do the things that she dreamed of doing. No one in her family had ever finished high school. She had such big dreams for her life. Every week we had a prayer meeting for the neighborhood, in the neighborhood, and every week I would pray earnestly for every child that I could name in the neighborhood and for all those I couldn't. But Kayla was always first on the list. I would pray that they would be safeguarded from those who wanted to traffic them on the streets of Ottawa, that they would be protected from being victims of human trafficking. I had served on the parliamentary inquiry into murdered and missing Aboriginal women and girls, and so I knew very well that as an Indigenous Canadian in a low-income neighborhood, hers is the demographic most likely to be victims of human trafficking. So I prayed earnestly for her for those 5 years, every single week. And there I was in front of my MacBook Air looking into the eyes of Kayla in a missing child poster. I'd come home when I had because I had to fly to Vancouver in a couple hours, and so I had laundry to do and stuff to pack and some talks to work on. But my laundry, I could find a laundromat at Vancouver, I can do work on the plane. None of that even mattered. I was even ready to miss my flight. I had to find Kayla. So first I looked on social media, discovered oddly that myself and any mutual friends were no longer her friends on Facebook. So I sent a friend request hoping that somehow she might see it if she's even alive. And so I called up a friend who's part of the team, a girl, because plan to protect. And so we hit the streets. I had just come in from the streets where the cold was all I could think about, but now the cold didn't matter to me. I didn't feel any of that. All I felt was this raw fear. Where's Kayla? We knew it was a fool's errand. We'd called the police and child services, but we couldn't wait. We just hit the streets looking anywhere we could for this little girl. I share this with you because we need to recapture the heart of Jesus, the emotion he's conveying as he shares the story that we're looking at today. Luke chapter 15, verse 1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." I'll tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous person who do not need to repent. This story is the beginning of an answer to a question that has been building and building here at People's Church. This is the final talk as part of a series of talks called Tough Conversations or Tough Talks. But here in the story before us, Jesus pulls back the veil on the heart of God. This God that Tim Barnett showed science points to, this brilliant, powerful God. He shows that this God is so absolutely, extravagantly, selflessly loving. That he loves each person so much that he refuses to be okay with the things that are not okay. I don't know a ton about caring for sheep, and I'm not a big math guy, but it seems to me that if I had 100 sheep and one of them was missing, as much as I would miss little fluff, as much as that might be like a financial loss for me and my family, I just have to cut my losses, because if I leave the 99, then what happens to the 99? Financially, it doesn't quite make sense to leave them, but God is a shepherd that cares so much for his sheep. God is a God who cares so much for you and for me and for the people in our lives and in this world that when there are people who are hurting, marginalized, he refuses to stay in that comfortable place, but rather he will go, and it says he looks until he finds it. And Jesus is so genuine, he just kind of assumes that, of course, everyone, do you hear the way that he just assumes that we're all like this? Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99? I read that and I think, I wouldn't. But he does. It's revolutionary what Jesus is saying to the people he's speaking to, because there was a saying among the rabbis of first century Israel, the time Jesus is saying these words, that said that God rejoices when the lost sheep come home. This beautiful, brilliant, powerful God is there, and when the sheep come home, he welcomes them. He doesn't rebuke them for being lost, he welcomes them. That's beautiful. Am I right? But Jesus turns that around and says, no, God isn't this God that's just there, that's just ready to welcome with open arms the sheep that are coming home, but that he refuses to stay where he is. But he goes looking, searching. And the emotion I shared with you of looking for Kayla, that God is this God who he's like, his priorities, like laundry can wait and his work can wait. He's looking, he's searching, he's getting, his knuckles might be bleeding and messed up, and he's there looking. Where is this lost one? To understand the depth of this, or how much this fully is the heartbeat of Jesus, See that at the start of his ministry, a couple of years before he shared this story, at the very start, when he made his career change from being a carpenter to being an itinerant speaker, a miracle worker, caring for the broken and preaching the good news to anyone who would listen. At the very start of this, he goes into a synagogue, pulls out an ancient scroll, this prophecy hundreds of years before he came about the coming Messiah, about himself, and he reads it over himself as his mission statement. Everything Jesus says, everything Jesus does can be put through the grid of these words. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. Jesus is saying everything that Jesus does, everything that he is this bringing good news to those who so desperately need good news. To bind up those hearts, those minds that are just abused, broken beyond repair. He can repair them. That he's searching for the lost. This is really good news. Whether you're living in a broken neighborhood that is kind of shaped and defined by financial poverty, like the one that I was living in, or you're maybe living in a really, really sweet neighborhood. Your house is sprawling and it's filled with toys, yet there's an emptiness on the inside. You've got jewels on your fingers, but underneath your sleeves that no one can see, you have scars on your arms. You're so successful, but there's pieces of your life, there's memories that you try so hard to forget. Things you promised yourself you'd never do, but you just find yourself doing anyway. Maybe there's no explainable reason at all. Everything about your life seems good, but this sense of decay or emptiness on the inside. There's a lostness in every one of us, every one of us. Things are not okay. And Jesus is saying that he is a God who is not okay with the things that are not okay. He's anything but apathetic to our brokenness. In the Gospel of John, it's one of the biographies of Jesus, this eyewitness of all that Jesus did introduces Jesus invading the world, coming into the world at Christmas time when he was born. He defines the Jesus coming to the earth as this. John 1, verse 5, light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That the most succinct summary of everything that Jesus is that he is a light shining in the darkness, in your darkness. As I was out on the streets, freezing cold, not even looking for Kayla, all of a sudden I get a notification on my phone that Kayla has accepted my friend request. Might she actually still be alive? I go and I send her a message right away. Kayla, if there's anything you need, I'm here. And then I see it says seen. And then I see her typing. And she writes back, no, there's nothing you can do. I'm alone, shivering on the streets. I don't know where I am. You can't help me. I wrote back, I'm not going to stop looking for you till I find you. I'm also on the streets. At this point, Kayla seemed to have no hope of rescue, but she knew that there was someone that loved her and who wouldn't stop looking until she was found. Does it matter if there is a God? Sure, science points to it. Our questions we wrestle through find answers in his reality. There's hope here for you and me as we hear these words that not only is there a God that exists, but that he cares for you and he loves you so much. He calls us to believe in him. And in many ways, this Tough Talk conversation series has been about discovering reality, the truth about who God is so that we can believe rightly, believe reality. And that's good, it's healthy to believe what's true, that there really is a God, he really is Jesus. But there's so much more for us. 5 times he calls us to believe in him, but more than 20 times Jesus called us, it's recorded for us through the Gospels, the biographies of Jesus, to follow him. Not only to believe, but to follow. What does that look like? Well, one of the things that's been helpful for me is to remember a game that was popular back when I was a child. It was a simpler time. And the game was called Follow the Leader. Some of you will remember it. And when you play Follow the Leader, you're not just watching what the leader's doing, kind of hanging out behind them, following them, but you're actually joining them and copying them and what they're doing. And so when the leader is doing something funky like this, you join them and you follow them like that, following them. And if the leader sits down or kneels down, you do that as well. You're joining them in what they're doing. And when Jesus says, come follow me, he's inviting us into his mission to be light in the darkness, to join him in refusing to be okay with the things that are not okay, to refuse apathy, to refuse to stay with the 99, but to go searching, looking for those who are hurting. But God actually expects every single human being to live this out. Some of you will be familiar with the famous story of Sodom and Gomorrah, these twin cities that were full of vile, self-destructive, abusive practices. And for all the variety of sins that were present there, all the horrific stuff going on, in Ezekiel chapter 16, there's a prophecy from God about why he destroyed these twin cities. It's very intriguing because there's so many different things that he'd have destroyed them for if he wanted to. But in Ezekiel 16, verse 49, this is a direct quote from the ESV translation. This is the sin of Sodom. They had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but they did not aid the poor and the needy. They had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but they did not aid the poor and the needy. They were indifferent to lostness, to pain. I read that as a teen, and I was, at this point, I'd been wrestling with some tough questions about God. I was wrestling through it for a long time, but by this point, I was convinced there really is a God, that the Bible is actually true, and that Jesus is all that he says he is. And I was attending all the church stuff from my church. I'd attend the citywide gatherings. Anything. I just loved to sing songs. I'm not a good singer, but just worship God through song. And I came across these words, and I confessed to God, I'm a sodomite. If this is the sin of Sodom, I'm a sodomite. For I had excess of food and prosperous ease, and did not aid the poor and the needy. I was apathetic and indifferent. We need to be a people who aren't simply willing to talk about the true things of God, but who give ourselves to that great pursuit of who he is. Does anyone know the time? Help me out. 12:38. Okay, so it's 12:38 p.m. here in Toronto, so it means it's 12:38 a.m. in Cambodia and Thailand. Night has fallen in these countries. And there are 4 and 5-year-old little girls and boys who are in brothels. It's their quote-unquote work day has been now going on for probably about 3.5 hours. They're going to be with 20 different quote-unquote clients as they're incessantly raped. Little 4 and 5-year-old girls and boys, victims of human trafficking, even as I speak. This is true every single night. I name those countries because of what time it is there compared to here. But this is happening around the globe. Such abuse even in Canada. I shared the story of Kayla last week at a kids camp I was speaking at on the Monday, and all throughout the week they kept asking me, can you finish the story for us? Did you find her? And I hesitate to answer that question because there are so many Kaylas on the streets that no one is out looking for. Now in this case, here's the end of the story. My friend and I, we actually, miracle of miracles, on that frigid night, we found her. I can forever remember the moment we came around the corner and there she was in a t-shirt and shorts, shivering. And normally, as part of a ministry working with kids, you don't hug them, but she ran into my arms, and I can just remember her just holding me, shivering, shaking, but that sense of safety that I could feel she felt, I'll never forget. You and I find relief in this because through my brief story, you have a connection to this girl, and we care about her being found. But there are so many other Kaylas on the streets. who in the winter are shivering, in the summer there's no AC relief. They're lost. And there's enough of us who self-identify as Christian to find her if we would yet refuse to be with the 99 and go searching for the lost. And again, this lostness is not simply found among those demographics that are victims of violence or poverty, but there's such lostness among the CEOs and the wealthy, the upper middle class, the 1%. So I've been praying for you. I'm excited for you because there is such meaning and purpose and adventure as we are willing to step outside of our comfort zone, step outside of our selfishness, and love the least of these and love the lost, whoever they are, however wealthy or poor, to embrace them in the name of Jesus and to share with them the hope we have. I've been praying for you because I care about your joy. But it's so much more than just you that I'm praying that you would embrace these words from Jesus, to follow him. Because there are many on our streets, in our cities, and our homes, and within these walls who need you to be Jesus' hands and feet, searching for the lost and the poor. When you hear even a preacher and he's speaking about God as this God who seems like he's just simply a God of morality and a God of rules and all this stuff, and you don't see this reckless love of God, this absolute passionate love of him that refuses to stay where it's safe and clean and goes into the trenches, then you gotta wonder, okay, you may have met him or heard about him, but do you know him? And I've actually seen firsthand that Jesus is the friend that parents would be concerned for their young people to hang out with, in a sense. I was in a car, we're driving, and a friend of mine gets a call from her dad, and he's saying, hey, honey, I want you to know that you need to stop this plan to go to Papua New Guinea and serve where you're gonna serve. It's dangerous. Just heard some news stories there. Bad stuff is happening. And the friend was like, you don't understand. Dad, God is a God of light in the darkness. And you're right, this place is dangerous and it's dark. But I've gotta go there because I believe that Jesus is just longing to bring healing and hope, and I want to go there with him. Jesus is that friend that leads us to stop looking out for ourselves and being selfish and sophisticated in that sense. But whether he calls us to go live among the poor or to go serve among the wealthy, he calls us to be searching for the 99. If you have ever tried to help put back together the pieces of someone whose life has been absolutely crushed, you'll find that there is no psychology, as much as it's helpful, or counseling, as much as I go and I have a counselor, that can actually repair that if it's just us human beings on our own. We know that this pain is real, and we really need help from something bigger and more powerful than us. And so there is so much encouragement and hope and life that's found in God. That if these stories are true, really real history, which I'm convinced they are, and I encourage you and challenge you to wrestle with that yourself, is this true? Then this God of whom science speaks, who's so brilliant and powerful, refused to stay in the comfort of heaven, but entered into the midst of the brokenness, decay, despair, and death of the human condition. As he hung naked on a cross, taking within himself the fullness of our guilt and pain and betrayal, of all the wrong that's been done to us, the abuse that's been done to us, or even the abuse and maybe criminal stuff that we've done to others. He's taking the fullness of that in himself on the cross, the fullness of lostness, and died. But he's so full of life, the author of life, that the grave could not keep him down. He came back to life, and we have eyewitness, good historical evidence that shows that this impossible thing is true, that it actually happened, that he's come back to life, and he lives today. And because of this death and resurrection of God, we're able to look to him, to Jesus, and say, would you wash me of all my shame and of all my guilt? Would you forgive me? But not only that, would you lead me in that pursuit of bringing healing, hope, and light to where there's brokenness, despair, and darkness? As we leave these walls at People's Church today, may we be stepping out from the fold of the 99, hitting up the streets, hitting up our lives with Jesus, looking for the lostness. Again, as you hear the story from Jesus, let us realize that you and I are not the 99 listening to the story, but we're either the lost who need to hear that he's looking for us, or we're the found who had been lost, who he's inviting us to go search with him.
Jesus' life shows us the heart of God. We're loved and celebrated by a God who initiates. And Jesus invites us to follow the leader, to join him and mimic him in not being okay with things that are not okay. There's pain and brokenness all around us, and it's not enough to just talk about it. We are called to action. We're called to go. Join us next time for more clear biblical teaching here on Living Truth.
Our program is recorded at the People's Church in Toronto, Canada. If you live in the GTA or plan on visiting, please join us. Everyone's welcome, and we'd love to meet you. To watch this message again, visit our website. Download transcripts, order DVDs and CDs, as well as our daily devotional, or sign up for our monthly newsletter. Online, you can sign up for podcasts. You can also join us on Facebook and YouTube. Join us next week for a new Awaken series recorded on location in Israel on the shore of the Sea of Galilee.
To be a Christian is to bear another's load, to carry what they hold when they can walk another day. To be a Christian is holding out a hand to help another stand when everyone is turned away. To be a Christian is giving love away. It isn't always understood that through our words God is good, but when we act with love, it says so much more. And there is something said of grace when it's written on our face that can touch a heart it's never touched before. For to truly be like Christ, it's not a sacrifice.